Welcome back to our show about Dvorak, and I hope you enjoyed the Classics for Kids episode that was called About Dvorak. If you haven't listened to it yet, take a moment, listen to it, and then come on back. So now I would like to play for you some examples of Dvorak's music. I had so many that I could have chosen from, but I picked a few that I thought would be interesting to you and would be really representative of his work. And I'm going to focus on pieces of music that he wrote while he lived and worked in the United States during the late 1800s, which is towards the end of his life. The first is called, it's a string quartet, and it is called, or nicknamed, the American String Quartet. And I'm just going to play for you two themes, which you may have heard before, you might not have heard before. Here's the first. Is that familiar? Okay, and then later on he introduces the second theme in the string quartet, and I'm going to play that for you. This is much quieter. So that one was a bit more somber, and of course you have to imagine the other three musicians. String quartet music makes a lot more sense when you have the full group. So please listen to that. I love it. I can kind of imagine the opening starts with all the musicians going like this. And it's like I can imagine the bustle of New York City or something like that. But listen and see what you hear. This next example, which is much more famous, I think it's in a lot of music or movies that you've probably seen, commercials. I'm sure you've heard it before. So this is called Largo, which is the slow movement from the New World Symphony. And to those of you who are my violin students, this is exactly what you are learning for our group class. So here it is, Largo. Now, when you go and you listen to the full recording, which you can find on YouTube, see if you can figure out what instrument it is that plays that gorgeous haunting melody first, okay? That's your assignment this week. What instrument is it? It is some kind of woodwind instrument. That's your clue. Okay, now we're going to go on to Dvorak's Serenade, which is your listening assignment for today. And if you have the the book CC uses, it's called Classical Music for Dummies, you can follow the listening guide. It's the Dvorak Serenade, and it is the fourth movement. If you don't have that, don't worry, just listen to it, and I'm going to give you a few things to listen to. But first, let's talk a little bit about Dvorak's Serenade. So, a serenade, first of all, became more and more popular during that time. Now, we think of a serenade between, I don't know, Romeo and Juliet. Romeo may have serenaded Juliet. It's like a song that someone would sing to another person to express their feelings. Maybe romantically, you could imagine it taking place on a balcony. During the Romantic period, there were several composers that were writing serenades for string orchestra. So it was like a song, but it was written for full orchestra, and it didn't have lyrics or words that went along with it. A serenade was written just for the strings, so it didn't include any brass or woodwinds. So Dvorak would have written this with violins, divided into two sections, violin 1 and violin 2, and a group of violists. Probably in those sections, there would have been about, I would say, 5 or 6 musicians, ideally. And then there were violas, and then there were also cellos and double basses. Probably there would be 4 to 6 cellos and 2 or 3 double basses, just depending on what they had at that time. So it's not a huge orchestra, and the sound of strings is very different from a sound of full orchestra. So you can compare as you listen to the New World Symphony. You can compare how that's different from the serenade for strings. So Dvorak's Serenade had 5 movements. This is the 4th movement. It's called Larghetto, which is slow in tempo, and it's placed between 2 more vigorous movements, so it's kind of like the calm between 2 storms. And what I would really like for you to do is just to listen. I think about this movement, and I think about it's just like pure goodness. It's just gorgeous music, and let it wash over you, and just fill your life with beauty, okay? The structure of it, with my violin students, we often talk about musical sandwiches. This has a structure, it's A, B, A. So if you can imagine, the filling of the sandwich is peanut butter. You have bread, peanut butter, bread. Okay? So listen for the opening part, the middle part, and the end part. ABA form, that's what we call it. And keep in mind that Dvorak composed this piece in only 2 weeks. That's not very much time if you think about it from beginning to end. And lastly, I just want you to think about, in all of Dvorak's pieces that you're going to listen this week, how does this make you feel? Or what is he describing in this music, and what might be going on? What might he have been thinking about? Does that noise sound like automobiles? Why did he choose those instruments? So think about those kinds of things as you're listening. And to review, make sure you listen to the American String Quartet, the Cello Concerto, and the Symphony from the New World, also known as the New World Symphony. And if you get through all of those, listen to his Slavonic dances and anything else you want to listen by Dvorak. You will love it. Thank you, and I hope you have a great week.